What scientific experiment would you run if money and ethics weren't an issue? I'd train gorillas in weightlifting, really see how tanked they can get. Boost them with steroids along the way. After that, I take my army of beasts, pump them full of cocaine, and let them loose in an empty shopping mall. Wanna see which stores they like and which ones they don't. You know, for science and shit. See if a monkey tribe could become dominant over the rest by training them to make and use weapons and other primitive technology. Also interested in seeing if they would take their newfound knowledge and begin to expand an empire. Near-death experiences, and what people see. So basically I'd want to kill a bunch of people then bring them back to life. I'm sure a lot of them wouldn't make it back. I'd want to see what a society of children would do on their own if they were alone from birth. Of course, adjustments would have to be made for when they were infants, but beyond that, how would they develop language, ethics, mythology, culture? And as they got older, how would they handle coming of age without adult role models? Though unethical, I think an experiment like that would answer a lot of questions about sociology, psychology, anthropology, and philosophy. It would be like watching the beginning of human society from scratch, with no external influence. Edit. Yes, I have read Lord of the Flies, however that is a work of fiction. Edit 2. You guys have a lot of brilliant ideas on how to improve this experiment and a lot of true stories to make hypothesize on. I'm really enjoying reading this thread. How long a decapitated head stays conscious? All we have are anecdotes that might have been exaggerated. I've always wanted a definitive answer, but you know, ethics. Have an Olympics where every single athlete is drugged to an insane level. I think it would raise what is possible by today's standards drastically. Put a baby human and a baby lion in an isolated island with enough food and water, see how they interact. How athletes from different sports react to fight or flight. Even further, would they fight differently than others? Raise a child without ever punishing or rewarding them, just let them do whatever they want. And then see what happens to their behavior when they age. I've actually thought a ton about this. I would put two people through the exact same conditions the entire life. Now I'm not talking just similar scenarios but everything from the weather inside the womb to the humans they interact with to the wind every day, and I would see if they are the same. Essentially, if humans are born with personalities or if we develop them through little things all our life. Essentially the butterfly effect. TBH, this probably wouldn't even be possible with infinite money, but it would be cool. Dinosaur cloning, what else is there to do? I will make 5 subjects of sane and healthy mind placed in a facility with 5 psychopaths, insane murders. They will have group activities in a pair of 2 from each group, and the activities will be of 2 types, moral and immoral. Then I will conduct results about how much these activities affect the subjects in both groups. Genetic altering of humans, I don't currently have an issue with anyone that wants to do it on themselves. However, to do it to an embryo or through the parent's DNA to see what we could do to advance humans would be amazing. Alterations to intelligence, memory, physical attributes, gills to swim underwater, visual alterations to see the full light spectrum and hearing for the full sound spectrum, immunity to all diseases and harmful bacteria, ability to eat almost anything for sustenance. The Gilligan's Island experiment. Shipwreck 100 people with vastly different backgrounds, wealth disparity, and personalities on a remote island. See what kind of civilization grows from it. Then do it 50 more times to check results against each other. I'd run a serial killer contest. First person to successfully kidnap and kill 50 people receives $10 million 1 year after the last kill, if they are not caught by authorities and if they can prove the killings. How many persons would undertake this? How many victims would there be? Brain transplants from humans to animals and vice versa. I'd like to know what people would really do for a Klondike bar. To measure the effect on development of humankind by eliminating the least intelligent 5% of the human population every year based on monthly standardized testing. I'd love to pit elite Madden gamers vs NFL play callers and see who is better at game management and play calling. Throw two groups of toddlers, one boys, and the other girls, on two separate islands. Provide them food via robots and not teach them anything regarding gender, sexuality, race, language, etc., and see how they develop, and never mention to them the opposite sex and have them be racially diverse too. It would answer so many questions regarding psychology. I.E. Is sexual orientation a product of nature or nurture? Are humans born with innate gender roles? Are humans naturally tribal and / or xenophobic? Etc. I'd like to clone several sets of baby Hitlers and see how they grow up in different environments. Some can include a loving family, the kind that you barf at because they're so perfect. A Jewish family. An artistic family that encourages his talent. An abusive family similar to the one he grew up with. A family of scientists. And finally, the most unethical environment, a family of politicians. How children develop when occasionally microdosing LSD. Soft target schools. To see whether a school where people are trained and have guns is safer or less targeted than a school that does not allow firearms. I don't know how it would be done, but someone had mentioned it to me and I've always wondered how you would test it. I've always wanted to try to breed a winter blooming rose. Ethics are fine, but the cost of having that many roses in a hothouse and the decades of selective breeding most likely required to accomplish it would cost an astronomical amount, so I'm sticking with it. I've always been really curious what the results of the Holocaust twin experiments would be if they were run by a sane person. If I didn't have to worry about the fact that I was slaughtering a bunch of children, which very much goes against my morals, I'd recreate those. Which prescription drugs aren't really dangerous to mix with alcohol, and to what dosage can you be closest to death without dying so I can get litty? Poke around in people's brains and see what I can and can't done from altering the brain. Imagine being able to stop allergies. How would the world react to a mountain of 100 billion pennies for free in the middle of a major area? The effects of marijuana use on people with pre-existing mental conditions / illnesses. I know there has been correlations in the past, but I would like some definitive research. Genetic modification. A legitimate eugenics experiment not rooted in racism and actually rooted in breeding superior humans. I'd use CRISPR and all kinds of gene doping techniques. After all the hoo-hooing is done, humanity will thank me for solving modern healthcare problems through genomic manipulation and ushering in the next era of human evolution. I'd also use those artificial wombs to mass clone, mass produce, and mass develop genetically modified embryos. I'd simultaneously pump billions into AI research so that the day-to-day responsibilities of running a society would be taken over by intelligent machines, which will free up precious time and energy that will go towards the eugenics cause. Iron Man suit. Ethics don't even need to be ignored. I just really want a complete Iron Man suit with all the weapons, flight, and FRIDAY. Catgirls. Oh, this is one that I have thought of extensively. The one key, however, is that in addition to a lack of ethics and infinite money, it would also require a few technologies to advance further than they have. Solve the age-old question of nature versus nurture. It would require a large number of cloned infants, of at least 20 gene lines. Each gene line would have half of the clones raised as recommended by the leading child care experts of the time. The other half would be raised in a way designed to create individuals with as many negative personality traits as possible. In order to ensure all clones were raised identically, their care and human interactions would be done by human facsimile robots, controlled via advanced AI able to deal with unexpected situations on the fly. Doing this is pretty much the only way that question could be solved. But I hope Noon does. I wanna see if the same franchise of a restaurant chain in demographically similar areas would have differing amounts of profit based on whether they let the employees be mean to customers if they want. I'd give varying doses of psilocybin to people suffering from treatment-resistant depression. I'd then use this information to see how their depression symptoms improved, if at all. There's much more to this, but this sums it up nicely. How many chicken nuggies I can fit in my stomach before I get kicked out of the McDonald's. I'd study the long-term effects of low-G on humans, by sending a habitat to the moon, and then sending supplies and volunteers. And I'd send a lunar bulldozer to cover the habitat with regolith because I'm not particularly interested in contaminating my results with radiation exposure. Teach a kid the wrong words for everything and see how long it takes for them to adapt. Force compliance on specific diets with a diverse sample of people and a well-regulated control group. Follow for 10+ years. Is veganism really healthy? How about paleo? Should we never be eating gluten or dairy? Oh man, I love this question. There are a ton of geoengineering experiments that I'd love to run if they weren't both 1. Illegal, 2. Insanely expensive, 3. Non-zero possibility of death and destruction. Iron fertilization. Basically dumping tons of iron dust into the ocean to cause an algae bloom, which should sequester a bunch of carbon and help mitigate global warming. Cloud seeding, space mirrors, dropping a nuke into a volcano. You know. Normal stuff. Solving the social part about autism. It's great, but to me, a light autistic kid, it's a straight kick to the balls socially. What would happen if you stuck a group of sterile narcissists on an island and made them create a society without social media? What would the resulting hierarchy look like? How would they create a social structure? What rules would be dictated by them? How would they act around other people that would manipulate them as well? There's this book named Oryx and Crake from the same author of The Handmaid's Tale, in which they make this scientific experiment, providing contraceptives to people, but secretly those contraceptives would actually make them sterile. So normal human race is extinct, but a new kind of humans were raised in a lab, and they were very different from us, like, they would only have reproductive seasons, so that avoided problems like rape. I don't recall very well, but that was like the main plot. If you read it and think about it, it makes sense. Is not ethical at all, but I am all in favor of controlling birth rates. How long humans can physically live for without sleep? My money's on 2 weeks. Separate 2 twins of opposite sexes at birth and reintroduce them 18 years later. They should have an extreme sexual attraction to each other. Not necessarily a scientific experiment, but a series of experiments to see how you can control nerve sensations from the brain and whether you can create VR that can perfectly mimic the sensation of touch whilst being motionless. As if you're moving and touching something in a virtual world but not in the real world. Is that even possible? I want to send someone to space without a spacesuit. I've read about everything that can happen, I just want to see it on film. How to find out if a girl actually, for sure, 100% likes you back. Fly into a black hole in space. I'm gonna see if I can create a real cat girl. Brain transplants. Get your own ideas, China. Put a baby in a pure white room at room temperature and find a way keep them alive with no human interference. What would they do for their whole life? Want to see what our mind could handle. Like if our mind could comprehend something incomprehensible. Edit. Just realized that kind of cancelled itself out, but y'all know what I mean, right? I would try to change human DNA to see if you could switch genders or make DNA where you are not female or male. Figure out immortality. Pretty much any Vault-Tec experiment. CRISPR the absolute fuck out of some kids and make some next level humans that can run stupid fast and jump crazy high, then make the superhuman Olympics trademark and figure out what humans are really capable of. I'd like to be placed in an underground fallout vault, me as the only man with 99 other people living who are women. At any point I can blow up the vault, just in case they drive me mad. Does conversion therapy work on straight cis people? It's pretty widely believed that you can't force someone to be straight or cis. But can you show someone enough gay porn or trans porn to make them gay or trans? What about forced feminization? If I did a very intense controlled study, I think we'd find that giving men estrogen and forcing them to grow breasts just makes them uncomfortable and disgusted. The reason trans women choose to have breasts is, we like them. What would happen if we started mass-producing nuclear weapons and then nuked every square inch of the Earth? Island of Dr. Moreau type shit. How many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Reactivating ancient genes in living animals. We're bringing back mammoths through elephants, toothed dinosaurs through chickens, you name it. What happens when a sister and a brother are in a room by themselves in Alabama? Creating real-life furries by implanting animal DNA on human sperm to fertilize the eggs. Segregate a small intelligent community from the rest of the world and make the community think they're on another planet. Then have them land on Earth and see how they interact. Real-life Hunger Games. With Elon Musk's Neuralink thing, the first thing I thought of was an unethical experiment. If you attached a whole bunch of wires to the speech center and audio center of the brain of a bunch of children, and network them together, I wonder what kind of language they would develop and how they would communicate with what is essentially telepathy. Give everyone in the world a minimum standard of living via universal basic income and see how society changes.